Good afternoon, Bitcoin Amsterdam. Just amazing to stand here. My name is Khing Oei. I am founder and CEO of Treasury, and I grew up not too far from here in Amsterdam. And when we started putting together the whole idea for Treasury and everything, it was absolutely natural for me to also roll in a conference. Why? Because in Amsterdam, we have an amazing community with lots of passion, developers, activity for the Bitcoin ecosystem. To bring it all together and seeing it together here is amazing. I hope you're all having a great day. Lots of interesting speakers. Later on today, I'll be interviewing Cameron Tyler Winklevoss. Make sure not to miss that. And we'll have a fantastic session. I do want to tell you more about Treasury. And before saying that, I got to say also, we're all here for Bitcoin. Bitcoin first. And this location, this old sugar factory, built in 1863, to me, represents a lot of the original values and the spirit of Bitcoin. It's resilient, authentic, and it's there for development and innovation. So, Bitcoin, where it all starts. Coincidentally, Bitcoin was developed right around the banking crisis of 2008. $60 trillion of value was lost, and many people lost their livelihoods, jobs got lost, everything else. Why did that happen? It was a fragile banking system. The banking system was fragile, and how is it being fixed after that? Governments end up printing money. And I think that's kind of the issue we're seeing. We're in an environment right now where we're 17 years later, governments continue to print money, we're seeing massive inflation, and the banking system itself is not stronger. Arguably, it's even more fragile than before. So we went from banking system to governments printing money, inflating fiat currencies away, to a banking system which is still very fragile. Now, what happens when a financial ecosystem is built on sand? It looks quite firm from the outside, but the moment there's loss in trust or a shock, that's when it collapses. And that's again where Bitcoin comes in. Bitcoin and its core attributes are exactly the opposite. It's trustless, it's peer-to-peer, it's limited supply. We'll know there'll only ever be 21 million. And ultimately, it gets stronger and stronger. It gets anti-fragile as it grows and as the community grows, which is why we're here today. Now, we are here in Amsterdam. And there is a lot of symbolic value to that as well. In 1602, it was in Amsterdam that the first financial exchange was launched. It really changed the financial infrastructure of the world. Corporate finance, financing, public investment, everything changed. And it instituted a golden age, frankly, a golden age that happened in that period. And that's why Amsterdam itself is and should be at the forefront of the next digital golden age. The one that's driven by Bitcoin adoption, Bitcoin going mainstream, and capital markets innovation. We have everything here. We got fantastic infrastructure, market players, stakeholders, and hopefully businesses like Treasury and others that are building on top of this infrastructure. And that's why we're here in Amsterdam to not only symbolically, but also as a center to go into Europe. Because ultimately, we're seeing a massive positive development in the US, but in Europe, we are somewhat behind the adoption curve. We need to increase, and that's what we're here for. If you think about adoption, as we always say in Europe, in Bitcoin, we're still very early. So, to give you an example, some of you may have seen these stats, but they're truly impressive. We're talking about major technologies here that none of us here can imagine living without right now. The internet in 1990, 3% adoption. Online banking in 96, 3% adoption. Social media in 2005, 3% adoption. Where are we Bitcoin right now? 3% adoption. So to state the obvious, all of these technologies have gone to 100% adoption. And that's absolutely where we're going to go with Bitcoin. And all of us in this room here are part of this. We're early, we're still very early, but there's a lot more to go, 97%. Now, how do we get that mainstream adoption? How do we get that next 97%? What's the path that brings us there, right? We've gone on a super accelerated curve, but still, we're still very early. Well, that's where really Bitcoin treasury companies have the potential to help with that. Globally, but also in Europe. And I think that's very important to, that is really necessary to unlock the true utility and the true adoption of Bitcoin. Bitcoin being the protocol and treasury companies being the platform to do that. It's really about bridging everything together, bridging Bitcoin with traditional finance, but also other ways. So for a Bitcoin treasury company, which we are obviously, there's really two sides. On the one side, we raise financing. Who do we raise financing from? Very often from institutions, from individuals who don't usually invest in Bitcoin. Think about individuals. Many of you here will have wallets or other means of buying Bitcoin, but if you are very early, you don't want to make it too complicated, you want to buy some Bitcoin in your trading app, actually quite difficult to do. A Bitcoin treasury company allows it very easy access. If you're an institution, you're a portfolio manager, you want to have exposure, very difficult to do. And a Bitcoin treasury company is a very easy way to do that. So with this, as a Bitcoin treasury company, we're unlocking new forms of capital to bring in capital into Bitcoin. There's also existing Bitcoin holders that may want to invest in Bitcoin treasury companies because it allows them to actually amplify their Bitcoin holdings. So this is very important. There's a whole range of new instruments, a lot of financial innovation going on that actually are used to raise this capital. We're talking about equity raises through so-called at-the-market issuances. We're talking about digital credit, a very large market. And we're talking about Bitcoin-funded backed instruments themselves. One thing that's also interesting is there may be many people who may never want to invest in Bitcoin. But as these Bitcoin treasury companies grow, they get into different indices. And guess where pension funds invest their capital? In indices. So ultimately, everybody in our society will have exposure to Bitcoin through these Bitcoin treasury companies, where they want it or not. And the people who do want it, they can amplify it, they can lever up their exposure. So what do we do with those Bitcoin? Well, the most important thing that a Bitcoin treasury company does with Bitcoin is don't lose it. Keep it extremely safe with many, many security protocols and keep it there forever. The second thing is always hold it, never sell it, just like a true Bitcoin Ether goes with. And the third thing is something that's very much in development. There's different ways to apply your Bitcoin and generate some sort of income on it. I mentioned lending here. Obviously, the whole banking system in the world is a lending ecosystem. And there's ways being developed right now where, in a very safe and secure way, a Bitcoin treasury company can apply its Bitcoin to generate income and yield. So this elevates Bitcoin from a passive store of value, which is great, it's digital gold, but it's passive, to something that actually surpasses into the economy and helps the economic ecosystem, which I think, unfortunately, we can all use right now. We need an active engine of innovation and economic participation for Bitcoin. So what we're really doing is building the financial markets for the future based on Bitcoin. And the way we think about it is in layers. At the core layer, layer one, is Bitcoin as digital gold. It's the Bitcoin treasury holdings, it's permanent, it's HODL, we will not sell it, but it's extremely solid base. If you think about it, compare it to a bank for a moment, as you all know, banks have 20 times leverage, they got sort of a very thin equity ratio, and guess what equity ratio is? It's fiat currencies. Fiat currencies are devalued every day through the inflation we're seeing around us. Bitcoin will have digital gold. We believe it's going to go up. You don't have to believe that. It has gone up historically, as we all know, immensely. But there's enormous potential for the digital gold to be productive for the economy, and that's part. So that's layer one. That's the core. Layer two is the capital markets instruments that are now being traded. I just mentioned a few: pref securities, digital credit, options. this whole layer. And this is how the financial ecosystem has been built up. There's always trading, there's always a buyer and there's always a seller. And Bitcoin treasury companies facilitate this active trading of instruments based on the Bitcoin layer. And the third layer is really a whole market infrastructure. Again, there's trillions and trillions being traded in right now in fixed income, in currencies, in commodities, and all of these derivatives trade back and forth. Bitcoin is going to be the basis, will be the basis for a similar kind of trading with many instruments. If you think about it now, there's a yield curve on pref securities. You can trade that. You can trade cross currency, but we're still very, very early. So we'll have billions and billions being traded. And again, they're based on Bitcoin as a basis. The securities that are being created and derivatives based on top of that. So this is a real bridge from Bitcoin to the financial markets, and therefore a benefit for all of us in this room. So where are we with Treasury? With Treasury, we are incredibly excited and incredibly honored to have had some great support from great investors. This was a founder-led round, which means that we didn't use any investment bank, but it's pretty much the network that we had. And there's a couple of benefits. One is that for Bitcoin, it's very important that you have the same mindset. You think about things long-term, and the investors we have are all long-term investors in the space. Winklevoss, I mentioned, they backed around. David Bay and Nakamoto, obviously a real OG in the space that actually created the whole conference ecosystem. They are core investors of ours, and we have over 50 investors globally that invest in our rounds. We did acquire Bitcoin immediately, so we have 1,111 Bitcoin, which puts us in the top 50 globally of Bitcoin treasury companies. It's clearly only the beginning, but we are active, we are live, we're kicking off, and we obviously have the ambition to become the largest Bitcoin treasury company in Europe. With our planned listing in Europe on Euronext Amsterdam, that gives us the toolbox that we can use that I mentioned, all the different securities, options, everything, because Euronext has fantastic infrastructure to do that. And then finally, what is super important, we keep mentioning community. Community is the core of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is, as some would say, in itself, the strongest social network there is. That's why I acquired the Bitcoin Amsterdam conference. We have all of you here, come from all over the world, the best speakers to come, people to learn from each other, people to network, get to know new people, and also expand the ecosystem, get new people in, get new people to learn from this, get the media in. We have tons of media here. Make sure we all carry out the same message. So with all of that, we're here to bridge ourselves into the next part of the digital golden age. And the fact that you're all here is a testimony to that. We're super proud of it. We hope you have a great next couple of days. And if you got any questions, come up to me, network with each other, go meet the speakers, and I hope you have a great time. Thank you.